The fact is, most people don't know they're anxious at the time, or sometimes what happens is people don't know they're anxious until they're very, very anxious, until they're way, way down that road. And the two questions I'm going to ask now for you to discuss are really designed to get you from realizing you're anxious later to learning to slowly realize it in the moment, or at least realize it much earlier than you know now. And ideally, where you're going to end up over the next weeks and months is being able to preempt it to where you know the kinds of situations and the kinds of triggers that make you anxious. So even as your anxiety is rising, you can intervene. Because the basis of this whole material is very simple. I believe that anxiety is the key reason that leaders burn out. I think it's the key reason you get into conflict where you're tired and exhausted, because you cannot be present to your anxiety and another person, or present to your anxiety and God at the same time. I believe that anxiety is actually one of the chief competitors for our attention that stops us from being fully human with each other, and I think even more importantly, fully human with God. So the two questions. First of all, anxiety tends to first start in the body. It starts physiologically. So the first step you can take in detecting your anxiety is simply ask yourself the question, where in my body does anxiety start for me? Does it start in a spinning mind, in a racing heart, or in a tightening gut? A spinning mind, a racing heart, or a tightening gut. Now, by tightening gut, I really just mean anything where you feel it physically. I've had people in my class say that they feel it in their neck, for example. But do you think about it? Does your heart pound, or does your body react? And simply by naming that and noticing it, you will begin to flip the power dynamic. There's something magical that happens, something miraculous that happens by simply naming anxiety. It goes from managing you to you beginning to manage it. So see if you can figure out, where does it start for you? Now, for some of you, you might be saying, well, for me, it's all of those places. Sure, but it almost always starts somewhere. And once you know where it starts, you can begin to now discuss in your group, how do I know when I'm anxious? So in my case, anxiety for me always starts in my mind. The reason I know I'm anxious is because my mind spins, and I believe the lie that if I just think more about it, I'll become less anxious. It's never true, but that's how I know I'm anxious. In fact, I've now worked on this so long that I actually set early detection systems for myself, and you can start doing this too, where if I go to bed thinking about something, and then I wake up and it's already on my mind, that's when I know I need an intervention. So discuss physiologically where anxiety begins for you. And then let's just, even in this first chapter, let's just start moving into some of the sources and triggers of anxiety. So the next question for you is, are you able to name in any given moment something that you think you need that you don't actually need? Are you able to name something that you think you need that you don't actually need? Now, of course, all of us have things that we need that we actually need that makes us anxious. So if you're a parent and your kid's playing on the road, you need to get them off the road and you're anxious. That's normal. That's not what I'm talking about. But in leadership anxiety, so much anxiety is generated because in any given moment, we believe we have a need that we don't actually have. So again, for me, one of my needs is I need to be impressive. I need to be liked. I need to be understood. And I believe the lie that if someone misunderstands me, or especially if somebody misattributes my motives, I believe the lie that I'm not okay and I get anxious. But what's actually true is I can be okay while they misunderstand me. And that's one of the ways I can lower my anxiety. Now, we get into that way more in chapter 2 and so on. But you can begin starting to name in your group, what do you think you need in any given moment that you don't actually need? And then the final question with internal anxiety for today is, what do you tend to avoid? What situations do you find yourself avoiding? Or if you want to be more pointed, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Are you able to name situations you avoid situations you're afraid of. I know so many lead pastors of churches that they avoid hospitals. They don't want to go visit, but they blame it on the size of the church. They say, well, the church is too big for me to go visit someone in a hospital. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But some of those leaders are actually not making a leadership decision. They're avoiding a fear. And if you can name what you're avoiding and what you're afraid of, then you can die to it. We cover that later. You can broaden your leadership platform. You're able to lead in a broader set of circumstances. You're able to lead a wider range of people, and God can grow your leadership depth. Okay, so that's internal anxiety. Now, group anxiety, this is way more fun because you get to spy on others. You don't have to be all introspective. This week, I'm going to invite you to start noticing where anxiety is contagious in a group. Anxiety is always contagious. And if you can start this week noticing group dynamics as much as you notice what people are saying to each other, you'll be really amazed at what you start to pay attention to. The simple fact is, we pay attention to content, what people say, but we react to process, the way people relate to each other. And anxiety is always contagious, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the most anxious person in a group is the most powerful person in a group. For those of you in a church context, have you ever been in some kind of a small group setting where somebody is always in need and all the attention of the group always goes to the chronic need of that person? That's because the most anxious person in the group is the most powerful. Unless a leader can notice it and use some of the tools in this book to lead in a whole other gear. And that's not dismissing that person, it's actually better for that person as well. And we'll dive into over-functioning and under-functioning relationships, and we'll dive into triangled relationships and why anxiety is contagious. But just this week, you can start to notice anxiety in a group, and maybe in your group right now as you go to discussion, you can start to even look back and try to figure out when was the last time I noticed anxiety in a group and share that story. Okay, I think we're going to have a great time together. This material is vulnerable. It's a journey of bravery. There will be pain involved, but it can also be a lot of fun. One of my concerns in this video, because I'm just talking to a camera, I don't have a live group here, is in our group context, we have a lot of fun as much as we go through a lot of pain together. But on this video, I'll just play my hand. I'm concerned that I'm going to come across that this is all earnest. But playfulness is a real gift in this material as well. So yes, you will experience vulnerability, and yes, I think you will be having to deal with some pain. But also, yes, I trust that your group can enjoy each other and generate some laughter as you tackle these topics. Okay, why don't you go to your group discussion now?